Focus. Ideate. Innovate. Enable. CNBC-TV18 and Palo Alto Network present Securing the Way Forward.
Through the course of the pandemic, we've heard a lot about what the new normal is likely to be. And while there are many points of disagreement, there are some points of agreement. One, that the new normal is going to mean a hyper-volatile world, which is going to be riddled with all kinds of uncertainties from geopolitics to economic. The other point of agreement is that this is going to be a world that will be driven by digital technologies, both at the back end as well as the front end. In what shape or form that is going to be is the crucial question. When we talk about the globe, as per many CEO surveys today, global CEOs believe that a recession is here. Whether it is going to be a hard landing or a soft landing, the jury is out on that. Back here in India, the mood is a little bit more resilient. Domestic demand continues to hold up, and CEOs believe that we will be able to ride out the storm, albeit we are not immune to what is happening globally. I think one of the big global risk factors that most CEOs are mindful of today is cybersecurity. All kinds of cybersecurity related events have kept CEOs on their toes, from breaches to IT outages, and the view is that this is only going to get worse as we move more and more towards the adoption of digital technologies, both, as I said, at the front end as well as on the delivery side. Well, we've got a diverse set of CEOs here today to talk about all of that and more. Thanks very much for joining us here on the CNBC TV18 special in association with Palo Alto as we talk about securing the way forward. Nikesh, let me get started on the macros first. As I said, global sentiment at this point looking a bit sour, and the view is that a recession is here. Whether we see a hard landing or a soft landing, the jury's out. When you talk to your clients, when you talk to CEOs, what's the sense that you get?
Clearly, the demand has been strong. Supply chain has been an issue. You are seeing rampant inflation in most parts of the world, which is causing all of us to watch the central banks try and put the kibosh on interest rates or keep getting the rise to try and control inflation. And I think there seems to be a strong resolution in the central banks that they are going to not hold back until they get inflation under control, because they believe that may have long-term damaging impact to the economy, both globally and in various countries around the world. I think that's kind of the risk out there. Sometimes you might, if you do that, you run the risk of making it a self-fulfilling prophecy. So a recession might be here in certain industries, certain sectors. I think if the central banks persist, they will make it a self-fulfilling prophecy, causing some sort of recession. I think it's too early to predict whether we get a hard landing or a soft landing. It all depends on how all these factors around us, which we're not able to control, unfold, whether it's supply chain again, the war in Ukraine, or oil prices. All of these are variables. The strong consumer in various parts of the world, so it'll be a bit of a wait and watch, but we seem to be headed that direction. Well,
we're heading in that direction, at least as far as the global economy is concerned. But what about India, Nikesh? You're here, you've just come back from a visit to your Bangalore office. You've got, about 800 plus people there. So what's the view on India?
Well, clearly, geopolitics has once again proven that a strong democracy, which is very focused on excelling over the medium to long term, will withstand the short-term pressure. So clearly you can see India continues to be the conversation around the world. Our stance as a country has been applauded. I think our focus on execution, our focus on making sure that India succeeds becomes more and more self-reliant. And clearly, the demographics are in our favor with the strong 300 plus million people in the right sort of demographic space where we believe there's going to be continued growth going forward. So I think the sense is we will hold consumer demand in the country. I do believe if inflation gets out of hand, if interest rates keep going up, the dollar will get stronger, which might have a marginal impact towards what happens in India as well, because we're still reliant on dollar imports. That might have a marginal impact, but it really depends on how well the Indian consumer holds up and how well can we continue to invest in infrastructure given all this that's going on around us.
Yeah, so Nirmal, let me address that question with you. Well, what's the sense that you get at this point in time? Is the market telling us something that perhaps, that we are relatively better poised today and it's likely to continue in this fashion?
There's no doubt market is a barometer of the economy and things happening. And many times, historically also, we have seen that what people are not able to see, market sees, what people are not able to see individually. And the collective wisdom of market is far superior. So if you really look at it dispassionately, then India stands out. India is uniquely placed because the crude oil prices have not hurt India as much, because India has been able to have non-aligned status with most of the superpowers in the world. And that apart, if you really look at inflation in India, then just 2% on a 5% is not as bad. Or if you look at the interest rates, they've gone up from 6.5, maybe by 150 basis point. Now, when you compare that with, say 0 or 1% going up to 3, 4, and 5, they're disastrous. That apart, India is becoming, for manufacturing, China plus one. And obviously, a lot of investment is flowing into India, or is on the verge of getting into India. And that is also helped by government's policies like PLI and many other incentives that they've done. And also, I think the one thing which is China plus one in manufacturing, but what people are looking at, more investors are looking at alternative to China, because China has been absorbing a lot of capital by way of direct investment as well as portfolio investment. And this capital, which seeks little higher return and sort of emerging market kind of investment, where India stands out in terms of geopolitical, democracy, political stability. So I think while the market is always like a pendulum, it can swing on optimism a little bit on one side too much. But if you have a long-term approach, then I think Indian equities will do well, because the fundamentals are strong. Many times we get overwhelmed by what we hear so much negative about the world.
Yeah.
Everywhere, everything is going wrong. Everything that could go wrong is going wrong.
But right now, everything is right in India, right? That's overwhelmingly, everybody believes that everything's right in India.
It's relatively right. Of course, we would have liked the inflation to be lower. We would have liked crude to be lower.
Yeah.
We would not have liked rupee to depreciate. But relatively, we are far, far better off.
Relatively far better off. Dhiraj, let me address that issue with you. Fresh measures being taken by the US administration, which is going to be a pretty impactful move against the semiconductor industry in China. So since we are talking about volatility and uncertainties, in a way, this is now a new added uncertainty that the world will have to cope with, and perhaps Indian industry as well.
My take is that India is a land of opportunity, and we have a very stable government. The policies are favorable. Demographics have been favorable for a very long. We've been talking about it, not being able to unleash the same. I think the young Indians, the startup community, everyone is looking forward to unleash themselves. From that point of view, it's just that we need to execute, implement well. We've been talking about the opportunity for very long. But now the macro factors, I think the macro policy related changes are making it more favorable and eminent for us to really make most out of it.
You talked about startups, and we have a whole bunch of them here in the room today. So let me just get a quick show of hands. What is very clear at this point in time is that the easy money era is over, given where interest rates globally are headed. And that is causing pain in the Indian startup ecosystem as well. How bad is 2022 going to be? Let's start with you, Nirmal. What is the outlook from the startup space at this point in time?
Every problem that you come up with also comes out as an opportunity. When people were not using cars during COVID, they realized that they can share their cars, and that's how our supply boomed. Same thing happens in a recession too. People find that they've got cars, they're spending money on the EMIs, but they're not getting anything out of the car. They find a way to monetize that car. That's exactly. So we are quite buoyant about the whole thing. We see that things are actually. We understand prices have gone up. It's not the same, but I think we are quite buoyant about that.
Okay, so you're still feeling pretty happy about where things currently are. Umang, let me ask you. Between daily hunt and everything else that you're looking at this point in time, how confident do you feel about being able to get to profitability?
Digital adoption in India has taken a 10x leap than what it was pre-pandemic. So we now serve over 350 million users online. The demand is huge for all kinds of content and services. It's actually helped us break Daily Hunt profitable for the last 8 months at about 9% EBITDA. So on one side, we see this complete discipline coming into the ecosystem wherein you're not burning money anymore. On the other side, you're seeing infrastructure come out, right? 5G, you're seeing adoption of people coming onto the internet every day. 60-year-olds and 70-year-olds are transacting online. So overall, I would say it's a pretty positive place to be if you can really prove product market fit, you can prove solid unit economics, and demonstrate that downstream with scale. But at the same time, capital is going to be starved. I think we are going to see a year where the amount of influx of capital this year will be a fraction of what we saw in 2020, 2021, which was pretty insane. If I could use that word.
Varun, let me address that issue with you. There is need for financial discipline. Everyone is now talking about EBITDA and cash flow. How do you make sense of what is going on within the environment at this point in time? And more importantly, how are you gearing up to navigate your way through it?
I think we're all in this washing machine. And whenever we think the clothes are dry, Russia war happens. Then after that, we think clothes are dry, inflation creeps up. Then I just think somebody's going to keep running the washing machine again and again. So we've got to get used to it, right? And I think that's the state, at least, that we've decided.
You're going to be very clean at the end of it, though.
Well, we will be clean. And like he said, I think this is the greatest moment next 8-9 years for India and for Indian startups. The way we see it at Paytm Money, for example, is as a capital market player. And I'll just give you a few examples. India, I think, is just getting started, right? So today, leading brokers, top 10 people would do anywhere from 1 million to 7-8 million transactions a day. I think that's going to explode to 50-60 million, right? And that explosion is about to happen. As that explosion happens, technology is going to get really tested in India, because the way we talk about technology, the way we talk about security, we talk about it in isolation, right? But India to go from a 5-7, like we do 1 million trades, for us to go to 50-60 million trades is a challenge on technology. But I think that's the greatest challenge India is geared towards and Indian startup founders are geared towards. So I really feel that while the world is in this washing machine, we figured our way to get out, right? And now that we've got out, I think the focus on engineering, on technology, on great product, on product market fit, on getting unit economy, are basic, very simple things. But I'm very happy that this crisis came in the form that it came, because I think it's given India a great chance and startups like ours to really change the status quo.
CNBC-TV18 and Palo Alto Network present Securing the Way Forward.
Let me get you to put on your former startup investor hat, Nikesh. Everyone says this time it's different. What do you make of this time?
I'm amused to hear that people are delighted that we got the crisis the way we got the crisis. I don't think anybody's delighted about the crisis personally, but look, in hindsight, is a wonderful thing. We can all sit here and say the valuations were ridiculous, but we were all participants in it. The investors were participating in the valuations that they were giving companies. The entrepreneurs were participating in it by going out and raising money at a sort of ridiculous set of prices, or as Umang called it, insane valuations. And it's great. It's kind of an arbitrage. You're lucky if you were able to participate in the arbitrage. So if you were able to raise money and put it in the bank, that's great. Now you have a lot more runway than you had. That doesn't take away from the need to build strong, robust businesses. I think one thing that has stood the test of time, you build a strong, robust business, you can weather any storm that comes your way. You could be unlucky that you're building a robust business and there is no capital in the market to be had, and you've got to go sell your shirt, to keep the analogy going. Yeah. And somebody else is tumble drying it now because it's not your shirt anymore, but you've got to sell your shirt to go and make ends meet. But I think, yes, vanity valuations are gone. You've got to suck it up, and you've got to accept that you may have to raise money at a lower price, but you were lucky that you had lower dilution, that you were able to go raise money. I think a lot of the businesses that started may not have had as robust plans to profitability, and they're relying on those 350 million Indian consumers to be unleashed. That if that takes a little longer, you're going to have to stay and watch how you spend your money and build your business a little better. I still believe there are phenomenal sectors in the Indian economy which are well served with technology and automation than with purely the labor force that we've always had in this country. So I think all those things are in the right direction. It just means that any entrepreneur who was looking for a quick exit at a lofty valuation is going to go back and have to work hard for the next 10 years.
So is this a buyer's market, and are you going to be shopping anytime soon? I mean, you've done, what, a dozen acquisitions?
14, but who's counting?
14, yes. Okay, 14. So are you going out shopping, given the fact that valuations are less insane now?
Well, Shereen, it's kind of interesting. I had this conversation with your colleagues at CNBC a few weeks ago, and they said, is there an indigestion in the market given all these high valuations? I still believe the sellers still have indigestion. I don't think the sellers have quite realized that the world is now different and they're not going to see those valuations for a long time. I think the entrepreneurs who raised money at a high valuation still haven't run out of money. I still believe they have a bunch of money in the bank. So I think entrepreneurs aren't ready to sell at a lower valuation yet. Even though they kind of understand things might be different, they're still hoping against hope. So until that indigestion settles down on the seller side, the buyers are going to stick around and wait, because we have a lot of time to wait, and the sellers may not. So yes, will we go look at interesting opportunities? Yes. Will we go look at great businesses that were being built and are caught at the wrong point, with the wrong sort of economics on their balance sheet? Yes. But I still think it's too early.
It's too early. Okay, Ramakant, let me address, the indigestion that Nikesh was talking about in the startup space. As you see what's happening in India today, where do you believe the points of pain are, or the significant points of pain are? And, for your business, for instance, what's the way forward in terms of being able to ride this out?
See, with this uncertainty and many things happening around the world, geopolitical, supply chain, I think we have got a unique opportunity to completely restructure, rewrite some of the elements. And when we are saying rewriting of supply chain, shifting the money flow and the material flow equation now, this is going to be completely digital and on a very advanced stack than it used to be, which essentially means we have got an opportunity to build better solutions. And someone like us who is solving a renovation for this country, buying new home interiors, like real estate developers sell their shell home in India, which I call 80% complete product. If you buy, that's probably the costliest purchase somebody would do in this country.
Yeah.
And once you buy a home, you can't use it unless you get some kitchen, wardrobes, curtains. Curtains are, even the basics are not there in the home.
Yeah.
And last, I think 6-7 months, we are seeing a massive upsurge on new home buying. In general, the
real estate market's looking good. Yeah,
it's doing good. Actually, it's actually probably the best time for us in a business than it was in last 3-4 years.
Well, that's good to hear. And yes, the real estate market so far holding very strong across metros, but also in tier 2 and tier 3 towns. Rajiv, come in on this as well.
I think we see three very interesting changes. One is, and there are opportunities for the entrepreneurs in that sense. The first is that if you take 2-3 years back, mostly Indian businesses were aware of the fact that digitization can bring about efficiency, but the thinking about digitization used to be strictly in terms of take a physical process and digitize it. You were not thinking digital first. Meaning you were not thinking in ways that, look, is it possible to create an experience which has no analog equivalent? And that has started happening. I think the second thing we are seeing from a business perspective is clearly with a lot of the capital being sucked out is a dramatic reduction in cost of acquisition for us. So we have seen, the number of unnecessary calls that our competition used to be making on our customers has disappeared. And the third thing which has affected the ground level is the cost of talent, especially coming from Bangalore.
But that hasn't gone down, surely.
Oh, dramatically gone down.
Really?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's the cost of talent in multiple ways, because earlier what used to happen was you probably had like maybe 2 out of 10 engineers joining in.
Yeah.
Now you have probably more like 6 or 7 out of 10
But the big tech is still seeing attrition rates of 20% plus.
Yeah, but 2 startups.
Right, but you're saying at much saner...
At saner prices. Yeah, at saner prices. So that has happened. We've definitely seen that talent costs have become much more rational. So I think all 3 areas, the business opportunity has really multiplied because businesses have realized that digital can do things which had no equivalent. Cost of acquisition has gone down because irrational solutions are out of the window. And cost of talent has become much more rational. Well,
that's an interesting data point that you've just thrown at us. Umang, you wanted to come in, and then I'll go get the others on the...
Yeah, we're seeing 3 big opportunities or challenges, whichever way you want to frame them. The first one is, I think businesses need to start getting clear who they're serving, right? Are you serving someone in a metro? Are you serving someone in tier 2, tier 3 India? Are you serving someone downstream in villages? The second big challenge is scale. Right? When you think about scaling a product or service across 350 million Indians that are driving consumption, the first is, where do you find them? Because we're still 1.4 billion people in India, right? The second is, how do you serve them efficiently, right? The the tax that you were paying around acquisition, I agree, has come down. But then your entire infrastructure, your cloud, has become massive costs. The third big opportunity is just using AI, right? AI as a use case, and deep learning and deep tech and deep machine learning is a massive opportunity. It's interesting now that non-revenue generating businesses aren't valued in the same way. So I think that's going to be a massive pressure test on startup valuations on the whole. Because a lot of them were not revenue generating, had insane numbers, to the point that Nikesh and I were talking about. But I think it's going to get real. But now it's probably the best time to build a real business. It could not get better.
Well, the best time to build a real business. Akash, let me get you to comment on that. How are you realifying the business model at this point in time?
Yeah, so I think fortunately for us, no matter how the times were, be it the most exuberant or the most pessimistic time out there, for us it's always been about building a real business. So as I always say, right, for us it's not about a change in tact or change in strategy. We've always been doing the same thing. It's just that the owners, the emphasis on building, right, on your economics, on your cost of acquisition, all of it becomes even more stronger at these point of times. I think that's what we keep looking at. One thing that we've seen is over the last 5 to 8 years, this is like the second or third time where we've had such a such a recession in a way, right? Where the valuations have fallen, money is not as easy to come by. Every time we've seen that happen, it's taken a couple of years for it to, I won't say a couple of years, right? Like close to a year, for it to get back to normal. And I think at some level in the startup ecosystem, that hope is still there, right? Okay, let's just tide it out. At one level, there are startups which are focused on, okay, let's get real, let's make a proper business, unit economics, profitability, all of it. At the same time, there are others saying, okay, let's just tide this over, right? Because once 2022 is over, the money is going to come back again. But yeah, I think as a lot of folks have pointed out, this decade, the downturn in India would be much lesser compared to, let's say, some of the developed economies. So it will get back. And yes, right, if you're building for the long run, if you have your basics in place, it is a decade, right? This is a decade for India to really make it big.
Reeju, building for the long term, have you managed to change any of the building blocks at this point in time, given the current reality?
I think it's a very good time to build a digital economy, right? And as payments companies, we're enabling a digital-first business models. And regarding building blocks, I think they are falling in place right now, right? So you have all the KYC stacks, you have digital transactions through UPI, right? So within the world, we are operating at a tremendous scale, right? We are the largest number of digital transactions in the world today, right? So the building blocks are there, right? And the regulator kind of is thinking from the point of view of number one, customer protection, that is paramount, and then don't stifle innovation, right? So that is the regulator's point. But I think we need to be also cognizant of the potential risks that could be here, like what could go wrong. So with anything that's new, right? I mean, there is an element of risk, that would come. So whenever there is a new technology that radically changes things, right? Like when internet came, when cell phones came, there were potential misuses that could happen. Social media came, there were potential misuses. So just like now, as digital payments scale up massively, what are the risks that are involved, right? Payments is a business of technology and risk, right? And that risk parts, I think we need to be very cognizant and be aware of those threats, right? And a good starting point is look at the digital payment aggregation guidelines, right? What are the technology recommendations? So that's a place to start.
Anish, you wanted to come in?
Whatever we are going through right now, it's actually a good opportunity for a lot of businesses to focus on the basics of businesses rather than following vanity metrics, how to get into profitability. And if you really look at Nirmal sir mentioned, the 2000s or 2008, the companies which had actually survived those by focusing on that. So we'll see a lot of those companies now which earlier couldn't focus on it because they were focused on different things, would be now focusing on this basic fundamentals that will lead to that. Secondly, while on the growth stage companies, the investments are going down, but it's also in the seed and the new entrepreneurs who are getting started. They may get access to a lot of funding and they'll get more time basically, and the bigger guys will not be focusing on that as well. So these are the good parts of
that is the silver lining. The seed funding continues to be pretty strong, even though we've seen a decline, at least as far as the large checks are concerned. Harsimarbir,
I think I'll add one more aspect to what we've been talking about. The best aspect coming out of this entire scenario is about people. When we raised the first round of capital from Sequoia, my dad actually asked me, he runs a small business in one town of Punjab, and he says, okay, how much is your profit? I was like, oh, they didn't ask me that. Right? And say, so why are you getting this valuation? I'd never got that kind of money even from my bank. Right? And that's a real question, right?
Yeah.
So that's one aspect. So people is a real aspect, and we end up blaming venture capital community a lot from for the valuation and stuff. But the reality is, if they wanted 10-12% ROI, they would have gone to mutual funds. They want to see bigger valuation, so they want to take those bets. So it's not completely right to make that argument on the venture capital community too. Another big challenge for us was, and not just for us, you had your leaders in your own company whose peers were in a lot of different companies. They would come and say, hey, when are we raising next round of capital? Hey, why are you questioning us if our customer acquisition costs have doubled up? It's okay. You choose growth or you choose profitability. Now that question has started to significantly change. Whenever there is a tough situation, everything which starts will get a lot of people interested. People want to be entrepreneurs because, hey, there is quick money. Hey, Shereen will interview us on Young Turks probably, or Nikesh will write out a big check to us. That's why they want to be entrepreneurs. Now it is changing. Why people want to be entrepreneurs is because they've seen problems which they can't solve. They get so excited about it that they just virtually can't sleep. And that cycle of quality of entrepreneurs which is going to come out is drastically going to improve. So quality of entrepreneurs is going to improve. Yeah. Quality of people joining the startups is going to improve. The decision-making metrics is not cash burn. It is real business building blocks. Mm-hmm. And the people supporting venture capitalists. Out of 10 companies, they now have a choice of putting capital in 3, which is probably better because the other 7 are just taking their time and giving them flashy numbers which don't make sense.
CNBC-TV18 and Palo Alto Network present Securing the Way Forward.
Mr. Vaitheeswaran, let me ask you, since we are talking about opportunities in the context of digital first, as a legacy healthcare education service provider, how are you looking at the future in this digital age?
We got 80,000 fee-paying students across the globe, right? And when the pandemic hit us, in 1 week, with no students in the campuses all over. But very heartening, and I'm sure it's not just us, many other global Indian university did this, transcended into digital teaching. And someone rightly said digital was not just taking teaching and putting into a PDF. I mean, you needed to have thought this through in terms of gamification, simulations, etc., on digital. And very proud to say that as a country, as a group, every of us managed to handle this challenge in a way where students were taught hybrid, online, finishing classes came up. Medical schools. In our medical schools, we had clinicals being done online with a grandstanding sort of an impact. Unheard of. Somebody had told me this before, I would have laughed it off. But the truth is, it happened. Likewise on healthcare. I remember when COVID hit, obviously COVID patients came in, and tons of them, we feel very sorry for them, many of them in critical stage, etc. But conventional need of medical attention, people who wanted selective operations, they couldn't get to the hospitals. What was a digital teleconsulting that, Shereen, we had 1%. We have close to 7,200 beds today in India. We had 1% of our daily on teleconsulting. In COVID, it became 300 times more. So many patients, they realized the advantage, if you will, of talking to their doctors, confiding in them on their health issues, getting a telemedicine done, and then the 1mgs and others of the world will drop the medicine home. I mean, it works. I think we are in good times to take on any more of all this uncertainty in the VUCA world that we talk of in India today as compared to what we were earlier.
Well, yes, you're right in pointing that out. But Nikesh, let's talk about that. There is the challenge of automating existing lines of function and and moving to the digital world, as opposed to thinking about transformation and thinking about change from a transformative perspective. How much of that has been accelerated on account of COVID? What are the conversations that you're seeing that are happening at this point in time on the transformation side? And how big of a challenge is it? Because many companies today are forced to deal with legacy infrastructure and at the same time moving to things like cloud and so on and so forth. To get the two to marry, how challenging is that?
half the businesses we're talking about today, had you tried to start them when the barriers to entry were so high, you actually needed a physical presence in 50 states and had different languages and people that you to serve. That would be much harder. Today you can go rent compute, you can go write software, and you can put up a storefront in any digital mechanism that you want, and you can start getting customers. So the world is changing. I think the pandemic, I think Umang said earlier, just took that and made that tenfold, or as Mr. Vaitheeswaran said, suddenly you had 300 times the people doing telehealth. And I think what it actually did was it made the new normal the normal. It's okay. Today my doctor in California says, do you want a Zoom consult or do you want to come in? That would be unheard of, right? So today we've suddenly, because of the pandemic, we've made it okay, which requires every business to be technologically capable. I think businesses have a real challenge that if you're trying to maintain legacy and rewrite the book, it becomes harder because you're trying to make everything backward compatible. Many years ago I learned it's impossible. You have to cut the cord. Things will not be backward compatible because we have to live differently. And that requires us to rewrite the book. So I think all that is happening, acceleration is going to happen, I think, which is where, honestly, all the opportunity lies. The opportunity lies in rewriting the book, not having to spend tons and tons of money building legacy capabilities, being able to go rent quantum compute in the future, and go be able to build your own business with a bunch of engineers.
So Dhiraj, let me ask you, what are you trying to do through the use of technology and tools now, both at the back end as well as the front end? And has the cost as well as the time to productize come down dramatically on account of this adoption?
So what digitization brings on the table is scale and inclusion. I think that's something very profound.
Yeah.
And how are we leveraging it? We had old monolithic architecture. So what we realized that there is market which is growing significantly. We are progressing well towards the completely moving on to the new ecosystem, new architecture which is on the cloud. And we'll be using both Google Cloud and Amazon Web Services in next few months itself. And it's completely new architecture. So we are adopting absolutely cutting edge new technology. We are roping in partners not only in terms of integrating with the fintech in India, we are also getting the best in the world to work for us if we need their intervention to us to go on a cloud and setting up a landing zone and having an ecosystem which is robust, secure and scalable. And we are doing that. I think that's something everyone has realized, that it's not about just the fintechs. I think there is no choice available.
Yeah.
It is inevitable. Everyone will have to spend more and more on the technology, both on the front end, back end, and this is the only way India can become a large market for us.
How are you reimagining or imagining the future in light of the many changes that are happening in the market, but also with technology?
I think India will go from Jan Dhan to Jan Nivesh, right? And I think that's going to be the next big thing for a lot of people around here, where capital markets overall 3-4%. I think we go to 30-40%. Right? I think there are three trends there, and I'll maybe talk. The first is what I call user security. So 70% of my consumers are first time to markets. We are purely mobile. We don't do anything other than that. And therefore, I think when you think of mobile only and you think of these users, how do you make sure that they stay with you over a long time? And I think user security is part A. Part B is data security. I think that's going to be the next big topic where people are underestimating what we've created. What we've created has issues, has topics to worry about. So how do you secure user data? How do you use it well? How do you make sure that users actually benefit from it? Because at the end, users need to benefit. Like if I'm investing my money, I want my money to work harder.
Yeah.
But I want to do it in a way in which I'm safe and I'm secure. And I think the third big change, which is a combination of 5G plus increased device computing power, which we are underestimating. So phones today, I've actually been talking on a Reddit group to somebody and I saw a prototype on a Zoom call of a phone with a satellite engine kind of power put inside your handset. Now the day that handset is at $500 in India, plus this 5G really doing 100 Mbps, plus this cloud computing and all of us have moved, I think you're going to start seeing a new revolution of output, of video, of the way we do business today will change, because today we do business in binary modes, 0 and 1.
Yeah.
It's all data-driven, point-driven, English-driven. We don't ask ourselves a very simple question. India talks 40 plus languages. Why is financial services in English? Somebody is going to solve first principles. The day you solve that, I think, and that's the direction we are thinking of, I think you'll truly transform India. So at Paytm Money, that's how we are, kind of conceptualizing the future.
Reeju?
Yeah, so I think like one of the major things here is, how do we enable banks to maybe work with fintechs who act as distributors of financial services, right? And I think helping, the API banking is the buzzword that we use, like how help banks offer APIs, decide what banking functions come under the, APIs, like is it account creation, payments, data sharing, lending, right? And then at the end of the day, connect with fintechs, which just scales up the distribution of these services to the mass market, right? And then that's purely digital, and that's one of the ways we are seeing growth happening.
Yeah, Rajiv, you want to come in?
We work a lot with very large enterprises, the likes of Reliance, Shopper Stop, Madura Garment. So the really super large guys, very traditional in the thinking. One change that we have observed, and we are changing in accordance with that, is that earlier they used to come to us by articulating problems. Today, there is a subtle but very concrete shift towards them wanting to solve the problems on their own. And they're saying, don't give me solutions. Give me tools with which I can stitch solutions. That's very interesting, because what that
So is that good news or bad news
It's
for you?
very good news.
Okay.
I think it's very good news, because what happens is that you move away, for a business, it's always toughest to find product market fit. Now, if you are able to abstract that into quote unquote a set of tools, right? Which are such that they actually unleash the creativity of the business on the other side to use these, stitch them together and create their own solutions. They start owning the product. And when they own the product, they'll pay whatever you want for it. That's the basic difference.
Okay.
Because there's no comparison point. When you create something,
right,
you become the creator of that solution now.
So
it's priceless.
Well, yes, it is priceless as you put it. It is certainly. Umang?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I'm seeing three things. One, if you aren't a digital business, you're dead, right? You might as well not be in business. So that's one. I think the second thing is, if you just look at the average lifespan of companies on S&P, it's shockingly just 15 years, right? So a lot of companies that are around are actually going to die. In fact, I believe all companies are destined to die unless they innovate. The third thing that I would say is of extreme importance is security. And I look at it from three perspectives. I think a large number of businesses have been built around the planet on misusing people's data. And I think the need is, if you just say GDPR is the strictest form of data and security, you're going to see India implement its own security policy. You're going to have data governance laws. You're going to have local data, local consumer security in a very, very big way. So how do you build and ensure data and access is going to be maintained in the same standard, right? And again, I think content graphs play a big role without taking social information off audiences and then misusing them.
CNBC-TV18 and Palo Alto Network present Securing the Way Forward.
Before I get to the security aspect, and I just wanted to get all of you on the panel in terms of what kind of spends are going into the technology side. How are you budgeting for this? Anish, let's start with you.
Being a digital-first business, most of the investments anyway go into technology in terms of people. But I can also divert a little bit into our customer base. Mostly the MSMEs who are actually they adopted the digital and they seamlessly moved to the digital, but we are seeing a lot of their spend which was earlier not there on digital. Just last week we are going through this exercise of going through a lot of these SMEs who are present on B2B marketplaces. Surprisingly, everybody has got a website and an email address, which was probably not the case. And we also found that for many of them, the B2B marketplaces created the website and they realized that, okay, now I need to have my own website, and they started having a separate website as well.
Okay. Harsimarbir?
I think the biggest investment for us, and I think a lot of good points have been touched in, is the way the organizations are going to be set up is going to be completely different. And I look at Army, for example. The commander or the leader of the organization, he or she has the context of where the world is moving and is able to communicate effectively across its teams. Starts from building the right team, starts from giving them the right context starts from, speed of decision making. One of the biggest reasons, companies fail is because they're just not able to make decisions. When dart throwing monkeys and common analysts take pot shots at what's going to be the future, the monkeys actually win. So I don't believe we really know the future. The answer is, how do we stay on top of the context of saying, hey, the decisions are going to change, the books are going to be rewritten. Are we nimble enough? Is the speed of decision making strong in a company? Do we have the people who are going to take those decisions rocket speed? And are we going to driving towards it? So for us, I think it's that context.
Akash?
Today, 8 of every 10 businesses starts on Instagram. It's not about having a .com or even having your own entity. Everyone starts on Instagram. You test it out, right? Because this is the simplest way for me to build a relationship with my customer, to actually test it out if things work. The moment that happens, then you take the next step. Then you start figuring out, okay, do I want to go to Amazon? Do I want to have my own website? Do I need to set up a server somewhere? Do I have an ESOP plan in place? All of those things come far ahead. The other piece is everyone, right? No matter where you work, right? Like, let's say the company. Today we say we are digitally enabled, or everyone is digitally, I wouldn't say enabled, empowered. Because everyone works out at a very high-end stack in terms of, the kind of awareness, the kind of data that we work with. And that's also changing how these professions are evolving. A sales leader of today or maybe a few years back would be someone who is amazing at, negotiating, convincing skills and all of it. But that's not the sales leader of tomorrow. Of course, while these things are table stakes, you also have to have the ability to, think from a product side of view, right? To be able to work with data, to be able to actually see where the market is, going. And a lot of these data tools come in over there.
Yeah, Ramakant, go ahead.
I think in our case, we talked about consumer inclusion, digitization of consumer side, and growth in consumer. I think that's more or less given and enough work is being done. But Livspace especially work with thousands of SMEs, freelance interior designers and architects. So I think the technology inclusion, digitization of the supply side, we are fundamentally seeing a change on the micro entrepreneurs and digitizing them, because without that, the decision making we talked about is a half-sided. We have enough data points about consumers, but really the real-time data points on supply chain, how a freelance office works, how a small manufacturing unit works. We talked about manufacturing, but digitization of manufacturing gives really the predictability, quality assurance, and the consumer experience in the end of it. So I think the lots of effort from a platform like us has gone digitizing the manufacturing. So we had an instance where a sort of a 10 million annually production capacity we could run with 2 people through a remote server in the office and computer, and this was literally running 2 shifts of a manufacturing unit. So I think that is the kind of thing which is probably the opportunity for us. Because the consumer side I consider given.
Yeah. Absolutely. Nikesh, let's address the elephant in the room. And I think every survey that you talk about, whether it's the World Economic Forum or any other, lists cybersecurity risks as, if not the top 5, the top 3 risks that global CEOs believe will or could impact their business. But, through the pandemic, since everybody is talking about digitization on steroids, it's also brought in the challenge of having to deal with cybersecurity and to deal with it efficiently. How are you seeing the conversation around cybersecurity change?
We're all getting more and more tech present. We're going to collect data for every customer out there. We're going to deploy a lot of AI against that data and make recommendations to our customers where humans do not need to be involved. Now just think about that. That means you're going to host a lot of data. Not only that, we heard about every SMB having websites and applications, and the only way they will survive in a digital world, or in the future, we should need to stop calling it the digital world, the only way they'll survive is they are actually interacting with customers online and collecting data as well. Now, if you believe that the same number of small, medium-sized businesses will exist in the future, every one of them needs to be secure. We're as strong as the weakest link. If they start having data which somebody else can get access to, and that destroys the trust and the credibility in their services, they're done. So this is, it's gone, cybersecurity has gone from being a nice to have to a must have. Security has to be designed to your solution today because it is a business risk. So if that's the table stake, it's no longer absolved by hiring a security officer. As the leader of the organization, your head is online if it doesn't work. So I think we're seeing most C-level executives, C-suites paying attention, is being architected into most infrastructure that's being built for the future, a much easier opportunity for people who are building things from scratch, as opposed to people who have to go back and reinsert security in perhaps legacy infrastructure that's been around for 10 years. So I think from that perspective, yes, it's good business for us, good news for us. But again, it's not late. We all will have to build it into our ecosystem. We all have to build it into our infrastructure. Customer data is going to be important. Privacy is going to be important. And most importantly, the ability to apply AI against all that data and make recommendations is going to be important. So I think it's becoming a more and more important topic. It has to be thought through as part of your infrastructure, and every leader needs to worry about it.
So let me get one line answers from each one of you. Nirmal, I'll start by asking you, as the leader today, what is the single biggest risk that keeps you up at night? Also the single biggest opportunity that takes up your mind space?
Security lapses, particularly in financial services, can be like a heart attack in a healthy body. Nobody can take a chance. So obviously that is one of the biggest. And as chartered accountant, we learn that trust but verify, but in the cyber security is a zero trust. Verify first, then trust. Obviously, that is one of the key risks that we always are cognizant of. And the opportunity is that once you have on the learning curve, obviously you build entry barriers. And India is the greatest opportunity, as we spoke in the beginning of the conversation.
Nirmal?
Yeah, so I think what keeps me awake is we know that somebody is rewriting the book. And the opportunity is that maybe that's us. We are rewriting the book, right?
Absolutely.
That's what we think.
And we hope that you do. Gentlemen, we could have continued this conversation, but unfortunately we're out of time. I think there is complete unanimity on where the India story is headed, and it is headed in one direction, which is up. We've spoken about many of the risks that some immediate, some medium, some long-term, but the physically and the fiscally fit will hopefully ride out the current volatility and the current storm. Thank you very much to my panelists here for joining us, for giving us insights into your individual playbooks as well as your playbook for India. Appreciate your time and thanks very much for joining us here. That's it then on this special edition of CNBC-TV18 Securing the Way Forward. We'll see you again next week. Till then, from all of us here, goodbye. Many thanks for watching.
CNBC-TV18 and Palo Alto Network present Securing the Way Forward. Focus, ideate, innovate, enable.